Good evening and welcome to Inside the Rookery, Season 10, Episode 12, where we are rejoined by a guest who you met at Table Talk Scotland a few months ago, Paolo Greco from Lost Pages. We're really happy to have you back,
Hello.
Paolo.
Hey, I'm so glad to be here. Thank
Hello.
you.
So, as always, I've got your questions that you've pre-submitted on practical magic, making magic feel grounded in the setting, which is what Paolo is going to be talking about with us. We've had a few weeks off inside the Rookery because of various family stuff. So, hi, it's great to be back. Nice to see you all. But I think we'll just jump straight into the questions. First, though, let's hear a little bit more about Paolo, you and your work for viewers who maybe aren't as familiar with it.
Hey, I'm Paolo. Uh, I have I run the small press called Lost Pages. We mostly do like arcane books, spell books, books of like about whale gods, like occult adventures, that kind of stuff. In the past, we published such things as like the first edition of Into the Odd, for example, and Macchiato Monsters. But our main fare is spell books. Um, uh, yeah,
And we've
I'm
got
not sure games wise what else I can say. Like I grew up like in Italy where RPGs were very, very mega niche, even amongst the nerds. Uh, and I rapidly got obsessed with them, especially with magic users. And I blame, yes,
what
that's
was
my
your first?
origin.
What was your
That's
first
my
TTR?
origin story.
Yeah, what was your first TTRPG, and was it in Italian or English?
So the first TTRPG was Tunnel and Trolls that I checked out from the city library. And it was a double solo adventure. I think it was I can't remember. Sorry, I can't remember was the which edition, but it had like this very colorful, bright, purple, livid purple color with monsters and heroes in the cover. It was amazing, and it was the Amulet of Salkti and the Arena of Kazan, and they were both incredibly hard, and I cheated through them two-handed to get to the end because I was 7.
Oh,
Um, but like Turner and Trolls as a little kid, I think it's perfect. It gave me like great sense of wonder, and uh, it's just like a strange game. Like the setting that comes out from Tunnel and Troll Adventures is just like a very, very strange and atmospheric place.
mm-hmm.
And then from there, I got like Catacumbas, which is the first published Italian RPG. It's not translated into English. It's just like a game where the players fall asleep and wake up naked in a temple in alternate pseudo-historical Italy with scrambled names, and you take the identities of like random people, and you get to be a mage or a barbarian that now works for the empire, or a rogue, or a member of the new religion, and you go through this like very strange but also very familiar late fall and post fall of the Roman Empire, early medieval setting. It's strange. And the other RPG I got as a kid was The Dark Eye, which is a German RPG. It's what Germans got instead of Dungeons and Dragons, because the Dungeons and Dragons translation in German was terrible in the 80s. For example, they translated Torch as Electric Torch.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it was that bad. So yeah, a few Germans like made their own, and we got that in translation. It was pretty good. Um, yeah, and then I got the D&D, and at some point, like I learned where the local RPG shop was. They translated also GURPS. GURPS has been historically my favorite RPG. Given what I write and what I publish, it might sound super weird because the vibes are completely different.
They are completely different. Yeah, they definitely are.
But if you look at the way, for example, magic is done in GURPS, it has layers of complications
Mm-hmm.
that I also try to make happen, just in different ways.
Okay. Oh, well, we will definitely get into that because magic is an interesting, like, rules component of TTRPGs because we don't have magic. The same with divine magic. Like, if you want to split them into sort of divine and arcane, as some settings do. So that's what we're really talking about today. When you're taking something that we don't have in our world, or although people may be practicing Wiccans, I guess it's a different
Yes.
kind of magical practice than you would do, say, in Warhammer or Dungeons and Dragons. So
Yes.
yeah, like so I've got, as always, we've got comments, questions pre-submitted from patrons on the Discord server, but there's also people in the chat. So if you've got any questions, thoughts, or comments, please do pop them in the chat as always, and we will bring them up. But we'll start with this one from Mark McGee, who asks, how do you delineate magic within the context of a fantasy world in which it is part of a scientific reality?
There will be like a very interesting discussion to be had about the scientific reality, but here I will read it as an empirical part of reality. So like magic phenomenon can be experienced clearly, as in like it's in a way more, I don't want to say predictable, but there is a clear react like causation between the spell and the effect. Maybe might not be perceived directly, but if a wizard says something is going to happen, it's going to happen, rather than maybe not. Like, of course, like here there can be like maybe it doesn't work all the time, but you know that's still the fact it doesn't work all the time doesn't mean that there is no cause and effect. While for our reality, what we normally see is that, at least in my experience, for my personal history with magic, has been that I found, the scientific method to be way more effective at affecting change. How do I delineate? This is kind of like a big question, and the question is, even in the real world, where for a while magic was, taught in European universities, how to delineate was blurry. For the longest time, there has been a separation between. Here I'm speaking from like a Western esoteric point of view, and also from my limited understanding of the topic. I'm not an academical. This is not my academical specialism. I'm a software engineer. I read a lot about esoterica, but like this is not my thing. I mean, it is, but just from a games perspective. There was a split between. So we're speaking about a society where the divine is present. Maybe it's not immanent, as in like the crucifix in the church is not literally God. However, God exists. Or might be like in more ancient society, like I don't know, in classical times, if you went to a village and there was a temple of, I don't know, Ares, the idol of Ares might be closer to the actual presence of the god as opposed to just a cross. As in, the immanent divinity was a thing, as in like the gods of your temples are actually members of your society, so they need to be appeased or not. Like if you want their protection, you need to appease them and please them, essentially. This is kind of important because, like, while in the West, because of Christianity, we have this strong split between the divine and magic. This is not necessarily so. This is one of the many, how to say, our view is by necessity, because we grew up in a Christian society, is Christianity pilled.
Yeah.
We will see a number of these Christianity pilled things tonight, but it doesn't necessarily have to be separated between, like, divine and arcane.
Yeah.
The things can be mixed.
And Mark continued the question to say, what extent is it an etic, stuff that's magical to us as players, versus emic, as perceived by the character's concept? And I think that etic bit is where our upbringings impact.
Yes.
Because if you didn't have if ancient Greece and, like, Greek and pagan mythology had continued, then our TTRPGs would look really, really different, because we probably wouldn't separate arcane magic from divine magic.
Yes, probably we wouldn't. For example, like, so this question is interesting because the failure in magic feeling magical in RPG, which is kind of common, like sometimes, like very often we get a complaint about, like, oh, these spells don't really feel magical. They feel like more like a tool to an end, as in, like, oh, I need to open the door, I have a knock spell, I need to blast these guys, I will just, like, I don't know, cast a fireball or whatever else is the equivalent for the system you're playing. I'm just using Dungeons and Dragons because everybody knows what I'm talking about, even if they don't play it or they don't like it or whatever. The failure in feeling magical is ours. Like, is from our point of view. Is us that we are not satisfied in the magicalness of the magic in the RPG. Like, whether our characters feel inward that that's magic or not is unconnected to our dissatisfaction. I'm not sure if this is the what the question, what this question was about. Going back to the previous one, there is a split that I find quite useful, and it's there are two ways that in my head I use often. The first one is asking demons or angels or other spirits to create magic for us. Like, so we invoke the name of the spirit or a god or a demon to give us a blessing or make something happen, and that happens. The other one is using the occult property of magic, like the occultism of that is like the hidden properties of reality. So, for example, like, a magnet is like a stone like every other, but it sticks to iron and it attracts iron. Or similarly, there was the belief that gems were tied to the powers of planets and gods. That's a cult power of the gem. So, for example, like, I don't know, amethyst, like the name says, doesn't make you drunk, like protects you from drunkenness. That's literally what amethyst says. What the meaning of the name, anyway, reality has some laws that are hidden to the people that are not wise to them, and that's what the cult is.
That's really interesting. So when I was writing with 4th edition, but actually this went all the way back to 2nd edition when Andy was writing, and I wasn't writing for 2nd edition, but we were working on our own campaign. I had done some work on exactly that. So in our world, you could get all the crystals and say what they like historically were used for. But I'd sort of started to think about, right, well, how would I port that into Warhammer? And, you know, in Wifrip, you've got the color magic system, so it's actually really easy to do that. But in that way, to be able to allow players to be like, hey, you know, the crystal stuff that some people really strongly believe in, some people dabble in, some people feel like it's a placebo effect, some people just like having crystals around. Like, wouldn't it be great if you could take that real world knowledge, because then you can go to the little shop in Stockbridge and buy your crystals and actually use them for your character? So for me, part of that was like looking at real world systems, translating them into something to bring more vibrancy and reality to the Warhammer world that we were playing in a way that increased players' engagement with it. But for the characters that you're playing, that's just what it is. Like, if you can't end and you've got a ruby, I was like, what's a red gemstone? A ruby, then it just is connected to that wind naturally. But and then you've got like a red and a yellow. Like, what does that mean? And I think that that's a really interesting technique for RPG writers to use to like build on the really rich history that we've got. That's like arcane, occult, that's gone through history, and use it to make the setting feel more alive.
Yes, and here I think what we are going to, like something that I feel this discussion always go back to, is we are getting, so are we building something that is there for a reason? Is there a meaning there? Does it point to like a more complicated reality than what we have access to? In that case, I think it's like, if there is like more layers and the players have an inkling of those layers and can learn about those layers, is, I believe, is just a better experience for everybody. It's more meaningful, and also if it's more meaningful, players can begin to think about it. So I'm feeling like all the examples that I have in mind are like a bit too grisly, but
we don't mind a bit of grizzle.
Yeah, for example, like in my game, because a lot of the magic that I have in my games is, especially in Dungeons and Dragons, the way I play, that I'm going to expand on this later, just to make an example how it works, of how you can make it like more interesting at your table. There are like sacrifices, and like so far, for example, like it doesn't have to be a human sacrifice. It doesn't have to be an animal sacrifice. It can be a sacrifice of something important. It can be a sacrifice of something symbolic. It can be a sacrifice of one's behavior, like taking a vow or an oath. All these things are, in addition to the material loss and to the, annoyance of having to do the work, they are more concrete in the way magic works. And I believe that like being more concrete in the way that magic works also helps a lot to bring more meaning. So for example, there is this spell called Passwall in Dungeons and Dragons, which you might not know the spell, but you're all familiar with the concept of a wizard waving his hands and making like funny words, and like the wall disappears and everybody walks through the wall. This is like typical like wizard shit from like bad 1970s movies. Like we're all familiar with this. In one of our books called Wonder and Wickedness, Brendan writes this spell that is called the Spell of the Subterranean Gullets. And the spell begins like this. All the cavern, caves, crevices, and cavities of the underworld are the jaws of Maxilor, the underworld god. By casting this spell, you beg Maxilor to open its jaws. And the spell effect is the same. It just breaches the wall if it's made of stone or earth. But like, so it's a bit less. However, the spell goes on saying things like, "Oh, the hole will start to like close down as the spell begins to end," and eventually, it doesn't really specify what happens when somebody is stuck there. But it's obvious, to me at least, they will be eaten by a chthonic god, which is cool. Which is very cool. I don't know, like, also you can cast this under the feet of somebody and they will fall in a deep hole. And then they will be eaten by a god. What's not to like?
Yeah, and we'll come to, like, I've brought my grimoire from Wifrip to give some hints on how you can support your players in taking what is in a rule book a very out of character description of spells, because that's what they often are in rule books, to show how in character your grimoire would be completely different and how it grounds it in the setting. I think Mark's kind of clarified a little bit more what he was meaning by the emic and the etic thing, and that is, why say is gunpowder causing an explosion in a TTRPG not magical, and a fireball is within that RPG itself? A better example might be poisons, as poisons in RPGs often function quite magically, or not like real world poisoning, but might not be portrayed. Yeah.
This is great. I'll take fireball, because fireball is super easy. Gunpowder, very fast combustion. The combustion goes through the gunpowder very fast. It burns the entirety of it really fast, really high increase in temperature, pressure wave, blast, flames. We're all familiar with how gunpowder works. Fireball, the official explanation from, I think, 2nd edition Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, I don't know exactly how 5th edition works, is that for invocation spells, you are channeling the power of an elemental plane, in this case, fire. And the way I say it is, you open a conduit between our reality and the plane of fire. Flames rush through. Everybody dies. Well, a bunch of people die. Fireball doesn't have to be like that. Like, the game effect of Fireball, there is an explosion, toss the pebble, all that stuff. And the way why magic works in the game, they don't need to be tied together. Having a metaphysics, like as an explanation why Fireball works, helps the narrative, because it creates more meaning in the game. And I believe here the problem, again, is lack of meaning, lack of explanations, lack of context. If things happen for no reason, just because the wizard says so, that's literally like a wizard that changes reality at its whim. But if instead we have some laws of reality, laws of magic, call them whichever way you want. Anyway, if you have a word with laws and the wizard knows the laws and can play with them, it's a more interesting, more layered, more complex game. Because the wizard, it's not only what the wizard wants. Of course, like, the will of the wizard is super important. And I believe it's the reason why people play magic users. Like, I want power to do my will. If I don't have will, I don't need power. So if we need to have a game, like, my advice is to find a way, like, find reasons why spells work. The 8 schools of magic, the 9 schools of magic in Dungeons and Dragons, every one of them has, not quite all of them, but most of them have a reason why they work.
Yeah, and
that's
a reason
helpful.
that's a metaphysical reason that's
Yeah,
grounded.
the metaphysical reason, exactly.
milieu, like it's not just one world, but how that world is constructed on a
yes,
quantum, like
on a whichever, like, what's the base reality of the world? Like the base reality of the world might be, for example, in D&D, is there are these like planes of existence. Some of them are one next to each other, like the ethereal plane and our plane, and then there are the elemental planes, which are also closed, and you can breach them. You can literally breach them to let the energy through. When you open a gate, for example, in D&D, well, not gate, the spell gate, but portals normally very often go only from one plane to the next. So D&D is also like a very complicated.
Can you hear Paolo still, Andy?
The planes in D&D are used as a way to explain a lot of the magic. And I believe that also is interesting, because like, this is why also the gods have a place. There is a scheme in divinity, which is also very important. Again, it's not gods are like these mega powerful entities that are mega powerful, and they're just mega powerful, but there is also actually a grand design behind them. Like there is a deeper reality to which they are part of. And I'm not saying that they adapt to the reality, but probably their existence shapes reality in that way. Maybe like the 16, 18, I can't remember how many planes are in the Great Wheel, like around, I'm not talking about the central disk. But if the alignment system of D&D was different, we wouldn't need as many planes, because reality would be shaped in a different way. And in this case, we're not talking about only our reality, but all realities, because that's how it affects all realities. Like all realities in Dungeons and Dragons are affected by the Great Wheel.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to pick one from Martine. So Martine asks, should all magic be grounded as a scientific discipline if a setting includes science?
Possibly. It really depends on your setting. Like, if you want a setting where empiricism wins everything, and like you can do magic research, like how you would do physics research. Like if you want to build your LHC equivalent in the magic world with like giant gems and giant tuning forks made of adamantium and crystals and blood of sacrifice, if that works for your setting, 100%. Maybe that doesn't work for your setting. Maybe empiricism doesn't work for your setting. Maybe you need something like being touched personally by, I don't want to say the divine, but something that is beyond rational thought. I'm not talking about irrational, as in like, this doesn't no sense, like whatever, but even like irrational, as in like some kind of experience that we understand that cannot be explained, and we are not saying that they're completely like that they're madness or unexplainable. They're just a thing that they are. These overly scientific approach is common in our, I believe, very materialist society, and it's also like how to say, born of our times. Like we live in a very material society. If I don't know how many people had transcendent experiences between D&D players. I don't know how many of them actually believe in magic or perform magic and don't believe in it, or had the experience of being, touched by divinity, or felt like they were possessed by divinity, or they, like, for example, in my case, I'm not a believer. However, I went through rituals. And one of them was a telemake ritual of the summoning of Horus. Yes. And the enthusiasm, as in like having a god within me, Like I felt like differently while the ritual was happening. I really don't believe like that I was possessed by the god, but my personal disposition on that night and after was changed. Why? Is it only the psychosocial aspect of the ritual, as in like we do this thing as a group of people, and of course it affects our psyche because we're in a room with a bunch of people with incense thinking about how we're being wronged? Maybe it makes us more mindful of the way we're being wronged. Horus is the god of revenge, so it makes us more effective, deliberate in standing up for ourselves. Or maybe it's magic. I don't believe it's magic. I believe that there was some effect there. Is this like perfectly rational? I don't think so. Is this psychosocial? Surely. Is it only psychosocial? I think so, but like the next person might not think so. So how much of this is empirical is...
I'm having a weird like dizzy spell, so I'm gonna get Andy Lees to read this one out while I like go and put my head between my knees. So just excuse me for a moment.
I was hoping you disappear underneath like you do in Lawhammer. Yes, so what's Ben saying here? Is there a role for a culture, the appropriation by a subculture of occult themes in opposition to the dominant culture in game design as a mode to effect change through culture or ourselves?
I think so. I don't think there has been some now that I think about it, yes. So I believe this can be done. Like we published, for example, 2 books that I don't want to say they were there to affect social change, but they were clearly using occultism in a way that was different and that I believed did work in both cases. The last, and it's like the last 2 spell books we published. Beyond the Pale, like Beyond the Pale is not a spell book; it's a horror Jewish mysticism adventure. It was made by a team of Jewish people. I'm the only Gentile in the group, sorry, in the team. The writers spent 2 years researching the Kabbalah, translating part of Kabbalistic books for it, and spent 2 years writing it. And it presents Jewish folktale and Jewish mysticism in a way that I believe has not ever been done before. Is Jewish mysticism required to play the game? Absolutely not. Is this a good introduction to Jewish mysticism? Yes, if you go there from an outsider perspective. I believe it can be a very good introduction. The other one has been, for example, the Book of Gob, which is our last grimoire that we published. And I believe, like, the Book of Gob is a horror spellbook. It's a spellbook that a horror movie sorcerer would have, but not like a silly 1970s horror movie sorcerer. It's a spellbook that, I don't know, I'm thinking about Hereditary. I'm thinking about, I don't know, is it The Conjuring? Or maybe the spellbook in Tonight She Comes. It's a pretty fucked up book. The content warning is long. And I believe that the team, just like it was written by 7 people, I believe that the entire team put a lot of personal, I don't say personal trauma, but used it to, I can't speak for everybody, but personally, I can say that like some of the stuff in there that I wrote was there to deal with my own shit in a way, exercise it. Is this a proper occult book? No, like nobody here thinks that the Book of Gob is actually like a working spell book. Even if it like does things like normal spell books do, which is it actually speaks to the wizard in second person. So the books are written like recipes. So it says like draw your glyph and tap on the door and swallow the key and whatever. It doesn't speak of the sorcerer as a third person. It speaks of the sorcerer as if the person reading the book. So there is an amount of bleed there. Also given so yeah, I hope this answered the question. There has been like for Beyond the Pale, I was really happy to write it because not to write it, to publish it. I didn't write it because it put Kabbalah in fantasy first and foremost, and I don't believe there is enough of that. And that was not appropriated. Like the writer is a student of the Kabbalah, Yokai Gal, and Gob helped ourselves. So in a way, it worked, I think.
That's good. All right, let's go back to the Discord questions. Let's delve into your dark side in terms of what is your TTRPG magic pet hate? Is there anything that comes up a lot in systems that you can't stand?
Yes. Magic as corrupting force. Magic as corrupting force is, I believe, the worst Christianity pilled thing that comes up again and again. And I really don't appreciate how this is very pervasive in game design. I understand that like we want the wizard to pay some price in case they're trying to do too much. This is great. This is like a perfect theme. Like it's great. Like you reach for the sun, your wings will melt. Yeah. Excellent. But oh yeah, you use magic, you're now damned. Smacks of, witch hunting. As in real witch hunting. As in, people died because of that shit. I'm not sure we need that. Also, that's something that happened, I believe, like, I can't remember the exact date, but in Western Europe, magic was not illegal. Magic was illegal, mostly, when it was used to do crimes. As in, like, if you cast a spell to kill somebody, you went to jail because you were a murderer. If you cast a spell to, make your ship come back home, nobody cares. Yeah. This changed at some point when the Inquisition decided. This has been a long process, but the feeling was that, to make it very simple, this is a very complicated topic, was that all magic was born of demons. Even natural magic, as in like the powers of the stones, that's natural magic. For a long time, that was seen as like, oh yeah, there are like things in reality we can't explain. Easy. But at some point, that became essentially Satanism. And that's why they burned people.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's my magic pet hate.
I think it's good. We've had, we've got a comment there from Ben saying the only place he likes magic as a corrupting force is in Warhammer.
Yes.
I guess because it's so hard baked into the metaphysics of that, and it's not. Yeah.
100%. In Warhammer, chaos is like not including chaos is magic. I think it would be a mistake. Like chaos is the main opponent in Warhammer after greedy people.
Yeah.
Like, the usual moral failing of people in Warhammer, I believe, is the first problem. If you don't agree, play through what's the name of Warhammer Amsterdam?
Marienburg.
Yes.
Yeah.
Play that.
Yeah.
At some point,
down the river. Yeah.
Yeah. At some point, I was like, I can't play this anymore. It's just too depressing.
Yeah.
Like, it feels like, even if there is no, like, at some point there was like some people affected by Warpstone and stuff, and we're like, oh yeah, those people need to die, and their corpses burnt because it's really bad. But everybody else in the city was just like,
Yeah.
yeah, it was a
We
lot.
in our Lawhammer actual play that we're doing, where we're playing through the enemy within that Andy Law is sort of changing and modifying. It's become a thing of like, what our party are trying to do is we're trying to stop the end times, we're trying to stop the end of the world, which Warhammer, like the original old world setting, was always in that 5 minutes to midnight doomsday clock of the end of the world could be right around the corner, and we're currently trying to stop it sort of ticking forwards. But we did reach a point recently where we just encountered so many just awful people. We're like, well, maybe the Empire doesn't deserve to be saved. Maybe actually Chaos has a point. The world just needs to be destroyed. Which, bearing in mind, I'm playing a priest of Sigmar, was quite a traumatic realization to come to. But yeah.
Yeah, but like, you have a point there. I think it's perfectly like, I'm not saying that like corruption is a bad thing. Again, think about your setting. Think about what you want to do with your game. In Warhammer, not having corruption would be weird. It would be a failure not to incorporate chaos in it.
Yeah.
But incorporating it just as a cost for wizards, kind of overplayed, overdone. I'm not sure if we need it. On the other hand, like, this bears repeating. I don't know how many of you have read Earthsea.
Oh yeah.
If you haven't,
Yeah, well,
read A Wizard of Earthsea.
Yeah.
Uh,
It's come up a lot. We've had multiple authors on who have cited it as their favorite fantasy. So yeah.
It's the reason why Lost Pages exist.
Yeah.
It's my first fantasy novel. It set the bar a bit too.
My collector's editions are up there.
Nice.
Society. Yeah.
It's my first fantasy novel. It sets the bar so high, I can barely read any other fantasy. I'm sorry, I'm spoiled. But one of the main themes of that book is that the protagonist has way too much power, way too much skill, and it keeps on getting in near death situations. Sometimes he dies just because it doesn't know what it just has no idea that it's too powerful. It doesn't know idea how to handle power, and all the consequences are always paid by somebody else. And if you look at it like that way, it's very sad. Also, it's an incredibly Jungian novel. I'm not going to spoil it, but there is a shadow, and there is a shadow.
Yeah, I mean, it's on the blurb on the back of the book. Like, if you buy
Yeah. No, I mean,
it's
I'm not spoiling anything. There is a shadow.
Yeah.
Also, there is like almost like a Lovecraftian god of sorts in that book at some point, and it's like, wow, this is read Earthsea.
Yeah, it is excellent.
Also, the first book is half magic adventures, half coming of age. The second book is a horror novel.
Yeah. And then I really like the fact it takes kind of quite a hard feminist turn halfway through the series as well.
Absolutely.
Which it's really interesting. I think I said this on a stream before. Probably when we had Anna James on, who's a author who mostly written kind of like young adult and kids fantasy books. Although she's just announced the publication of her first adult book, but she loved Earthsea as well, and we were talking about that, and in particular how like when I read it as a kid, as a boy, like I loved the first one. It immediately sparked my imagination, and the more I read the series, I grew less enthusiastic. I reread them like last year, and the complete opposite. With each one that I read, I loved it even more. Because I guess it's the same reason why. I don't know if you know that Arthur Miller played Death of a Salesman.
No.
It's Willie Loman is this like kind of pathetic middle-aged salesman who's never achieved his dream in America. He's a disappointment, and it's all very sad and all very tragic. That play was quite often taught in high school in Scotland and I think in America, and like kids just don't get it, because of course they don't get it, because they haven't failed at anything. They're teenagers. They have all this hope and optimism.
Yeah.
So anyway, we've gone up on quite a tangent, but yeah.
I read it when I was 10. Tehanu was not written yet. Tehanu didn't exist.
Yeah.
So I read the first 3 books, which are all the books, and then I read like A Wizard earlier on this year, and I'm like, one, I remembered everything in disconcerting detail. And second is like, this is completely different now.
Yeah.
This guy's an idiot.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Your
I hate him.
has really changed. And I think like it's interesting, like to go back to some of the chat earlier about magic in worlds and systems understanding. As you guys were talking through it, like the thing that kept coming back to me, obviously, is an English teacher, somebody who reads far too many novels and then has to talk a lot about novels. I was trying to explain to a pupil in my class this week about the difference between fantasy and magical realism, which is, to me, I'm
adjacent, but not the same thing.
Yeah, I absolutely understand the difference, but articulating it in a way that would make sense to a teenager was really tough. And it was because he was doing a piece of writing that was unnecessarily fantastical, and I was suggesting that were he to make it a bit more magical realist, because he has a limit, it's for his exam piece, so he only has 1,300 words.
Okay.
You need to narrow it down. I was like, if we make it more magical realist, you don't have to explain all this stuff. You can just.
Of course.
Yeah, and I wondered if some of that distinction between is it magic or is it science? Is it familiar to the characters, or is it dangerous and unknowable and unpredictable? I suppose that aspect of genre is part of it as well. You might want to tell. I have a world in which magic is just a fact of life, and everybody has it and everybody uses it and it's normal. Or you might want to have a world in which it's much more like the real world, but there's just this one thing that's different in it. We've got more Earthsea fans in the chat.
Ojon is really a saint. Oh my God. Yes. That guy has so much patience.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, you much more empathize with him as an adult, I think.
Oh yeah,
yeah. Hi, Lindsay. Shall we? Let's flip it around then. So we talked about your pet hate. Let's flip it around to: do you have a favorite magic system in a TTRPG? Is there one that particularly floats your boat?
I really like GURPS magic. Essentially, every magic is okay. Let's step back. I haven't played a GURPS wizard in something like 35 years. Okay, getting back to it.
Yeah.
GURPS, the base GURPS magic, the normal GURPS magic mechanics, I really like. Every spell is a skill. You have every wizard has a gift, an advantage called Magery. Does various levels, but basically is how much you're attuned to magic or how much magic you have within you. That gives you more spell powers, make magic easier. Also to learn a spell, sometimes like most spells have prerequisites. So in order to cast, control water, you need to learn first, find water. And in order, there are complex things. In order to enchant objects, normally you need to learn a different spells from 10 different schools of magic. It's complicated. Myself, when I was 10, I really dug that shit. I was like, this is the best thing. I don't want to play anything else with it for the rest of my life. That has not completely changed. However, now I run a game for adults with schedules, and we can only play 3 hours a week. And there are 8 players at my table.
That's a lot of people to coordinate. That's, yeah.
Also, there are something like 5 spellcasters.
I could feel like for many DMs like that's a nightmare right there.
No, that's great. I love it. Like the amount of chaos that happens is amazing. So now I'm gonna like the point where I'm at is after, I don't know, 2015, after, I don't know, 13 years of writing this kind of stuff. I think I settled on something that works, and something that works is right now. We have magic by the book, as in like wizards follow the rules of magic in the handbook, and that works. That's perfectly safe, controllable. And I nicknamed the system called the Health and Safety Magic System, like inverted commas, because there are a number of rules for magic in the book. Well, turns out you can ignore them. You can ignore every single one of them. Depending on what you ignore, things get out of control in different ways. So, for example, and this is like written in the back of Book of Gob, the way it works, is that, you're casting spells. Like normally, maybe you say, you can cast 5 spells a day. Like I'm just super simplifying. You can cast 5 spells a day. What happens if you cast the 6th? Well, you're breaking that rule of magic. Let's call it the rule of mana. Again, I'm simplifying. If you break the rule of mana, you need to make a wisdom check, because you're trying to power it with your own soul, and you might collapse, or you might take some stat damage, or any kind of like mental exertion. If you cast a spell that you haven't learned properly, or like if you're trying to cheat the spell, casting like by doing shortcuts, you need to do an intelligence check if you can control it. And if you fail it, the effects are not gonna be what you want. Something's got to give.
Something wild is gonna,
Yes. And most importantly, there is something that I'm playing now is every time you break the rules of magic, you need to make a charisma check. In my game, charisma is not simply also like how pretty and like, great you are with people, but I'm going back to the original meaning of charisma, which means anointed. Like charisma is like anointment, as in like how much the gods anoint you with their, how much you're like, basically how much the fate and reality likes you. If you have high charisma, you can get away with bullshit. If you have low charisma and you fail the checks, I have immense magic catastrophes tables through all the books that we put out, we might have like hundreds of results. And normally we try to do catastrophes tied to the spell. So if you cast a spell from a specific school, I will probably roll on the table for that school, but maybe it happens in other things. Like, so for example, there is in the Book of Gob. So the Book of Gob is this horrible sorcery school spell book. It has 7 fingers. You can only see 6 on the cover. 1 is the finger that is not there, and it's about the magic that changes memories. So the finger that is not there has never been there and never will.
Love it.
There is the finger that points the way, that is about getting lost and about the wilderness, and that kind of horror. One of those catastrophes is wizard's gravity goes westward, which is super interesting.
Yeah.
Because like if you're inside, you fall a few meters and it's fine. If you're outside, hold on to the next tree. Or like there is a catastrophe where the spell works perfectly and then works again and again and again and again, and it doesn't stop working, and it keeps on working. And if the spell is a spell with duration, it means it's permanent. If it's a spell with instantaneous effects, then it's super weird. Like if it's I don't know, I don't say a fireball because fireball is kind of boring, but at some point like the channel keeps on being like opened again and again and again and again. So you have this constant sphere of fire, which is, I mean, I'm not used to have normal fireball cast in my neighborhood, but if I had a persistent globe of fire in my neighborhood, it would be more concerning.
Yeah.
But imagine if you cast like a teleport spell, and the teleport spell keeps on working. It's gonna literally bring the campaign unexpected places forever.
Yeah.
Then I'm thinking about like another one that happened in our campaign is that the caster goes into a coma. It was a vivimancy spell, so to deal with like life and life force. So the caster goes into a coma, and their life force is combined with life force in the areas. And when they wake up from the coma, their physical form will be changed by this life force melding. And in our group, what happened is that, like, I'm just saying an example because these are the examples that I bring up as like, I actually tested this. I'm not making, I'm like, these is like years and years of practice behind this. And the practice is it consistently produces hilariously bad things. Like, I'm not saying bad as in like, oh, I don't want that in my game. It's like, oh, I don't want that happen to my character, but I definitely want that in my game. Essentially, the elf collapsed, and they were in an ogre den. So the elf life force got mixed with some ogre life force. So when he woke up, it was a half elf, half ogre. And in addition to being mega buff and really craving raw meat, he also got disowned by his family because elves be racist.
Yeah.
And yeah, like I find that these again, going back to Earthsea, if you meddle with too much power without regard for consequences, there will be consequences. Like the fact that you don't care at some point doesn't mean that they're not going to affect things. Maybe they don't affect you.
Absolutely.
Maybe like you have a magic catastrophe where all the newborns within a mile will be moon calves.
That's
and for
good.
the
Like when we were doing the core book for the fourth edition of Wiffer, we deliberately, like Andy and I, in the miscast table, like we deliberately put lots of things like that, like to do with.
I did appreciate that.
Yeah, that they'll, all the anything born that night will be stillborn, or all of the milk will curdle, or kind of whatever.
Yeah. That was like, it was good.
It's really interesting to me. It's that constant reminder. And again, I would never want to yuck someone's yum. People want to play their games differently. That's absolutely fine. But the amount of players and GMs who didn't see that as a big enough downside, like, just surprised me. Because it didn't have an immediate, effect on the murder hobo that was sitting around the table, so therefore it was not going to stop that person casting more magic and taking more risks. And I thought that was interesting.
This is very on point. I'm gonna have essentially a 1 hour long version of these as a talk at Dragon Meet with James Holloway of Monsterman. Yes. And we're talking about this. Like, sometimes magic has a cost as a result of the catastrophe or not. And James was like we're having a disagreement. Like, for me, no, let's not say for me. Like, the cost can be either borne by the player that casts the spell, as in like the character of the player that casts the spell, or borne by people that he cares about, or borne by somebody else. And And of course, the closer you are to paying the cost, the less of an externality it is. Like if you are removed, it's not your problem. But then it means you're hurting people for your power. And if you don't care about hurting people for your power, isn't that the definition of evil?
Yeah. To me, anyway. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it can be one of the many definitions of evil. So I'm not sure whether I want more to hurt the player or to not hurt the player.
Yeah.
Like, sorry, to hurt the character or to not hurt the character. Because if I hurt the character, there is a direct cost. If I'm not hurting the character, there is a moral cost on the player. It was like, oh yeah, your spell, you had to sacrifice 47 dogs to cast it. I'm saying this because one of the wizards will not graduate. One of the wizards in the campaign will not graduate if he doesn't find 47 dogs.
Wow. I definitely wouldn't have that in a live stream game. I can imagine how the chat would go, but yeah.
No, but again, like this is not a game, like my Sunday game is not a game that I would play with people I just started to play with. This is not a game that I wouldn't play with people that are not okay with this. Like we got to this level of fantasy horror through months of negotiating the level of horribleness we wanted the campaign to have and the players to be involved with. There has been cases where things went off camera because it was too much even for the table.
Yeah.
That's
it, and it's much easier to negotiate that stuff with a party that you know well, isn't it? It's why there really is a distinction between what you'll run in your home table and what you'll run at one shot at a con or something.
Yes, and also what I would publish.
Exactly, you would never run something like that with a
bunch
of strangers at a con. Like even with all the warnings, with all the X cards, and with all the voluntary sign-ups, you just wouldn't because.
I think that so there is this spellbook I wrote, Clonic Codex, and it's basically like a very queer coded Magic University thing. I wrote this like in 2013, 12 to 14. It was mostly like a satirical gotcha at Glasgow University because I was really let down during my my postgrad. And there is a school of astrology, the school of the stargazers, and their school of magic is called astrology because they're astrologers, and they're also like haruspexes, as in like they have ways to know the future. And in every astrologer starting kit, there is a liver map. If you don't know what a liver map is a map that depicts a liver, and on all the areas of the liver, there are like we found some liver maps from Roman times, Etruscans, and they have like names of gods in the various parts of the liver. So it means that they would like literally gut animals and like look at the liver, see where blemishes in the liver were, to find out which god was going to be affecting the future. And this is one of the ways haruspexes do that. They can also look at like birds flying at sunset and like at the dawn. They can look at lightning in the sky. They can look at the stars. However, if you are so deep in a dungeon, you can't feasibly go home and back to the dungeon again. Looking in the guts of monsters is literally the only way you have to do this. So there is a whole thing about what's the price you're gonna pay for magic. You want to kill people every time you want to look at see the future?
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe it's goats. I mean, and it's lunch for a bunch of people, but still.
But then what if there's no goats around? What if, as you get increasingly desperate, how far are you willing to go?
Yeah.
And I think I've just clocked the time in the corner. Normally I've got Lindsay, and obviously we hope Lindsay's fine. I'll send her a message afterwards to see if she's okay. Normally I've got her keeping an eye on the time, and I haven't, and I realised that we've just run slightly over. So apologies to everyone if I've been keeping you back. Well, look, Paolo, this has been great. Endlessly fascinating, as we knew it would be. I feel like we could probably have carried on talking for another
For a
couple
while.
of hours. So
Thank you for having me over.
Well, can we have you back on again at some point in the future?
Anytime. You have my number. Well, my mail.
Yeah. Terrific. Okay, lovely. Well, Lindsay normally does this end bit, so it's going to be less slick than normal. Obviously, I have to thank Paolo for coming on. Thank everybody in the chat for your excellent questions and your attention. And if you're watching this later on in demand, hopefully you've enjoyed it as well. Thank you as ever to our patrons who back us and are able to keep Inside the Rookery ad-free forever. We very, 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 very much appreciate your support. And do check out Paolo's stuff. It's very, very good. If you didn't catch him in our tabletop panel, do go back and check that. That was an excellent chat as well. Lots of good conversations. And yeah, I don't think we have end credits. This is probably going to end very abruptly, but I will say goodbye with our traditional caw-caw.
Caw-caw.